Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 28th of October, comes to you from London. And we're seeing commodity prices falling very heavily, the whole energy mix in Europe. Crude oil, Brent crude below $40 as we speak. So it's down 3% this morning, and that's having a big impact on commodity prices. We'll look at the macro situation first, looking at currencies and stock markets, and we'll just see here that things are really just starting to deteriorate quite rapidly. The dollar is climbing, so it's looking very much like that was the low that we saw in September. The long and medium term charts are still bearish, but we are rising above the cloud. Remembering this is my long term, medium term, and short term view of the market. Weekly, daily, and 60-minute with the corresponding point and figure charts. And I'm running on a Refinitiv icon data, but of course with Updata you can run on dozens of different data sources. It's all the same. Looking at the euro, we're seeing that sinking lower against that stronger dollar, so that's quite key. And sterling falling back through the 130 level, so we're sinking lower here on the short-term chart as well. Sterling against the euro is actually holding the 110 level, but is falling away a bit this morning. Bitcoin is a standout. It's rising. It's making new highs, multi-year highs. So Bitcoin really starting to rise. The cryptocurrency people feeling very much happier. Looking at the S&P 500 index falling away. It fell away yesterday, and we are just now really showing that we've made a second lower high. We now look to the lower low. We've got downside targets potential of about 20%. And if we look at the Nasdaq, that was down quite heavily yesterday as well. We look at the Nasdaq, we're seeing we've got downside potential here of 22%. Shorter term targets showing, if we make new lows, 5% as a shorter term. But it looks like we will unwind around 20% of the market now. The Dow down a third of a percent, and again we've got downside targets here to play for as well. The futures this morning, the S&P 500 future, the E-mini is down 1.25%. That's a big fall, and the Nasdaq E-mini is down 1%, so also quite a big fall there. So looks like US markets will open much lower. The sentiment really changing, of course, in the week that we run into the US election. The VIX volatility, we have said, is the fear index. If we're above 30 on the fear index, that is bad for the market. And we're now up 8% this morning. We're sitting at 36 and starting to look, if we close out at these levels, we will be making 4-month highs on the VIX. So that's not good. And we're seeing upside potential for the VIX for another 10-15% higher. So markets now getting quite fearful. The FTSE future in the UK down 2%. The DAX in Germany is down 2.8%. So we're really seeing stocks falling away, sentiment falling here. The CAC Quarante down 2.8% as well. In Tokyo, we were down a third of a percent overnight. The only market that really bucked the trend was China. It was up 0.5%, but we saw in India we're down 1.4%, and the Aussie market was actually flat. But the Aussie market has a lot of work to do. Got nowhere near making new highs when you look at this chart, and we are still in bearish territory there as well. Gold is holding the $1,900 level. It's down very slightly in this sell everything environment, but the long-term and medium-term charts still look pretty good. Silver also is down, but long-term and medium-term still looks very strong. US 10-year yields broke much higher last week, and we're just seeing that really just coming all the way back. So lots of comments coming out of the Fed, of course, and markets getting fearful, and so we're seeing Fed rates coming right back. That's the 10-year yield. It's hard to say whether we bottomed at 0.5%, but we are seeing the yields falling back this week, having risen quite strongly last week. A quick look at the energy mix. We mentioned that Brent crude is below that $40 mark. It's really teetering with that level this morning. We've got downside targets to 39, 36.80, and if we will have a new downside target here as well, so 37.46. We've got targets to 30, 35, so we really do expect crude oil to be in the 30s now for a while. WTI, of course, is already there, being priced a little bit lower than Brent, and we've got downside targets anywhere between 3 and 6% lower. The short-term downside targets, we've got 3 and 4% lower. US nat gas actually holding fairly steady at $3.02, so it's holding on to the $3 mark, so it's not been hit as heavily as crude oil. We are seeing gasoline prices down 3% following crude, looking quite bearish on the chart with downside potential there as well. Coal is down as well. We're seeing coal prices down 1.4% this morning. We are breaking lower, so that's pretty bad. And emissions, of course, has been a standout. Could we recover? We are now coming back to test that low that we saw last week. Not quite there yet, but we are coming back to test the bottom. It's very hard to be positive on the energy mix this morning, and we're seeing gas prices holding trend, but they are down quite sharply this morning as well, down 2% on MBP front month, TTF front month. And if we look at winter gas in Holland, we are seeing down 2.4% there. The trend not quite as clear as the front month contracts. Gazpool was hit pretty heavily yesterday. We saw a big move down there, and so we are just seeing prices there. The real standout, though, is German power. It's down quite sharply, down 2.5% this morning, breaking below last week's low. Of course, new lows are bad technically. We've got a downside target of 5% now on the short-term chart, and there's one as much as 7% lower activated. 35 looks like quite a likely level now for German power, so just keep an eye on that. The quarterly contract falling, front quarter falling also quite heavily, making new lows. And if we fall lower than this level that we've just bounced at this morning, then that's a further 8% lower, so that's quite key as well. Nordic power, we're seeing sharp falls here as well, breaking to new lows, breaking the July low, taking us back to levels that we haven't seen since April, so really showing its hand there. And we're seeing the same with the quarterly contract there as well. And if we look at, last of all, just UK power, holding trend, not falling as heavily as European markets. But the big one this session today will be just watching crude, Brent crude, and just watching that level. But it does look like oil price will plummet. We went out bearish to clients this week on oil, and that's where we're going. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.